At Viking Village, we have basically 3 types of fishing gear. Now, one boat usually cannot switch over to another gear because there's a lot involved there. Because boats are made for certain gear, right? So the first thing I'm going to talk about is scalloping. That's what we do the most of. There's 2 boats against the dock. One's waiting to fuel up, the other one's icing up. They have, and you'll see the dredge when we go over there. They drag on the bottom. There's 2 different places that they fish in the ocean. There's 6 closed areas controlled by the government. And then there's the wide open Atlantic Ocean. So the government says to the guy who has a scallop license when he can go in there and how many trips. And if he goes into that area, he has to come out with 18,000 pounds, not a pound more. So they made them buy an antenna that cost 8,000 bucks. Or someone gets hurt, or they drift across the line before that 18,000 pounds, their trip is over. So they have to make very sure that they catch 18,000 pounds, they have a good crew, and the equipment works. They can't afford to, let's say they caught 14,000 pounds and they broke down. They just lost 4,000 pounds times 10 bucks, okay? It's very economical. So they have to be really careful. Yeah?
They weigh them?
No. They can't weigh them out there because it's a scale on a boat.
How do you know you got 18,000 pounds?
Well, that's a good question. Because we buy the bags for them and we make sure they are absolutely uniform. So they base that on 45 pounds per bag, divided by 18, and they know it's like $3.95, something like that, and they come in. And they want to come in a little under because every now and then Fish and Game shows up, and if they're over, they're going to get a big fine. And then the scientists, the government, the fishermen together, did a whole bunch of experimenting out there, looking at all this, that, and the other thing, and they came up with a scallop plan. So now, by law, they fish 75 days or less per year. They only got 75 days to do it, so they have to make the best of it. Come November, the scallops come small, medium, large. The largest are the most expensive. And come November, the big ones shrink down to medium-sized ones, so they don't want to do that. And the closed areas are all large. So you can see the importance of those closed areas that they go into. I'll move over to the net boats. We have about 14 of them. That's a crew of 2. They leave early in the morning, 3 or 6 a.m., and they come in when their day is done. So they're a daily fisherman. Scallop boats, week to 10 days, or in a closed area till they're filled up, which usually takes 5 or 6, something like that. And I have no net fish to show you because one, they're not fishing today. It's a long weekend. We can't hold it for 3 days. We don't want to do that. And yesterday there was a storm blew through. They're little lure boats, so they don't want to go out in the storm. And Thursday, which is yesterday, is our huge purge day. I'm surprised I have anything to show you on the dock because 4th of July weekend, I would imagine most of you guys are tourists here, right? We have to fill up Baltimore, Philly, New York, and Boston so that they can have their grilling parties too, right? We also ship to Vegas, Wyoming, West Virginia, LA, San Francisco, Chicago, Milwaukee, all FedEx. So they get fresh stuff flown out, and they've never seen anything. We just started this like a year ago. They're amazed of how fresh fish can actually be. So, and the casinos, they pay a high price for it. Right? Bluefish in the summertime, weak fish, we're not allowed to catch shad anymore. We're not allowed to catch stripers. And monkfish, I have a monkfish to show you. A boat just came in, we thought we were done. You're gonna like that because it's a real, for you guys that don't know fish very well, it's really ugly and vicious looking, but great eating. So they packed that up, which we just finished, and we give them free ice. The only place on the East Coast that gives away free ice, only here. We want to make sure they bring in an A quality fish. If we were to charge them, then they would probably pinch and scrimp and save and blah, blah, blah. We don't want that. So then you have a possibility of a B fish. So people all the way down to Cape Canaveral know our net fish are the best. That's how it works. That was by owner direction. Lastly, the fishery is the longline fishery. Those boats down there. There's a couple pictures on the wall over there by the fish market. I'm sure you've all seen Deadliest Catch. Those same film crews went out on our boats, 4 of them, longline boats for tuna and swordfish. And they, anybody seen that show? Yeah, one of the boats, yeah, Warner Brothers came down, picked out a boat. People said, why would they pick that boat? It's because they wanted a boat to look like the Hannah Bowden. And it's the same hull design. So the budget on that movie went way over budget. So the boat is really green. Well, the boat they rented was red, so they changed the name. It was a scallop boat. They made it look like a longliner. They went up to Gloucester with 3 crew members. So when you watch that movie, there's 3 guys behind there actually running the boat because she can't run the boat. And a hurricane happened to develop in the Caribbean, came up the coast. And while they're filming, they had actual hurricane winds filming, so they got really lucky. It was supposed to be an 8-week rental. They brought it back 4 weeks early, and my brother had to pay them back. You know, so he's going to get on his loudspeaker, a few expletives, get on the back deck, get ready. Okay, the guy that fell over with the hook in his hand, he's gone. Nobody's going to jump in after him. And nobody, but nobody, is ever going to touch that throttle of the captains in the wheelhouse. First of all, nobody's going to go in the wheelhouse. Well, the producers, by direction, wanted a greenhorn on that boat. When we went fishing, there's no greenhorns. Today, there's no greenhorns on those boats, period. They don't want them. They're worthless. So they put a greenhorn on the boat, so somebody has to get off the boat, and he's got to get paid by the movie crew to not work, because they bumped them off. They put a greenhorn on the boat to create drama so that you say, oh, what an idiot he is. You go talk to your friends the next day and then you watch the show. So that's how they do it. So that was by direction. That was by producer's direction. Yeah. The poor kid's a lifeguard. He's never been fishing in his life. He had no idea. There was a contraption that they welded onto the hauling station by steel with a camera looking back so they can show her fishing, right? Which is good for you to see. Well, a sea came along and knocked it off. That's how powerful seas are. Bends steel, takes off steel too. Took the whole thing off. So then they had to throw something together out there that was they didn't do it right, and they blocked her vision. And a hook came up and grabbed her hand and pulled it through the block. And so it tore all the skin off her finger. You can see the bandage. So they had to come in for her to go skin graft. You know, so that season was over, you know. Anyway, you can see the fish that they catch. Tuna, which is 3 different kinds, albacore, swordfish, mahi-mahi, and mako shark. You cannot, please, do not have inflatable balloons, helium, and let them go. You're going to kill everything in the ocean, especially turtles. You kill them. This boat that they call it a long line for a good reason. That line is about 40 miles long. With every 150 feet, with a piece of bait on it. They set it after dinner, then they go to sleep, they let it soak it. And they only catch tuna and swordfish 1 week before until 1 week after the full moon. Anybody know why? I have no idea. If you know, tell me. So nobody knows. But if you're a tourist on this island and you're on the dark side of the moon, you couldn't care less what the moon is. You want your tuna on the plate, right? So for the most part, it's locally caught. Because on a scallop boat, there's actually 2 crews on that boat. They fish 24 hours a day. It's 6 on, 6 off. 6 on, 6 off. So you don't work very long, but you don't sleep very long, and it's brutal work. Brutal. And then there's 5 crewmen. One's a swing guy, so he works 12 on, 12 off, so he gets to sleep really long, which is a good thing.
Does the captain keep the same crew, or are they?
Oh yeah.
Like
oh no. If you want a job on this boat, somebody has to die or go to prison. Both have happened because they make so much money. They only work 75 days. Who's going to give up that job? So to answer your question, a deck schlep this year will probably make 90, 100,000 bucks. First of all, this is a monkfish. Okay, this is the one I told you goes to Korea. It's kind of ugly. They have to leave the stomach intact because the Koreans like the stomach. It's a delicacy. So they clean it with all the guts taken out of it, but they have to leave the stomach in, right? He also has a really big mouth, some ugly teeth, right? He also has a built-in fishing pole on the top. Looks like a worm, right? So he blends into with the bottom. He puts that worm out front. A little fish comes by, he swallows them up. This is a tuna fish. This is a yellowfin. He's a 35-pounder. Anything 50 pounds or more gets graded. 1, 2, 3, chocolate. Chocolate means he bit the hook and died in hot water, cooked his meat. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not bad. It doesn't look pretty. So when you go into the fish market, if you saw a chocolate steak next to a 1 steak, you're going to buy the 1 every time.
That one's not, I mean, it's pink, but it's not. 8 scallops in a gallon bucket. And what happens is, inevitably, when you dump that bag out, you're going to get a bunch of these little side meats left over, and that's what they use to catch the striped bass.
Did you yourself try it raw ever?
Oh, I eat them raw all the time right on the boat. Right out of the washer after they're washed up. We wash them with the saltwater hose. These, when we bring these in, they never even really touch fresh water. If you miss the meat, see that chunk of meat I left on there? How it's not a clean cut? It's a little potato chip. If you do that thousands and thousands and thousands of times, that's pounds and pounds that you're losing, you're throwing overboard. So what you want to do is, yeah, for the demonstration. So what you want to do is, my knife has a twist in it. So when I go in, the knife is already facing up against the shell because you want to scrape that top shell. Hear that? No. See how the meat is on one side? Then you're grabbing the gut with grab the gut with the shell, flip it overboard, get rid of it, and then you're ready to throw that in the bucket. What we do is we have 2 or 3 buckets set up. So you put the little ones in one bucket, the mediums, and then the large. And that's how they're graded. And when these guys are going fast, their hand-eye coordination is unbelievable. I mean, they're just
you can't believe it.
that bucket,
Kind of like tossing,
you know. Most of the times, the scallops are going to be average. You're going to have like one bucket fill up more than the other bucket. So you scrape the top shell, grab the gut, throw it out away, into the bucket it goes.
You got some big ones.
You're going to add salt or sugar. As it starts to cook, what we want to do is we're going to keep an eye on that. You'll see the browning on the sides. See how it came apart on its own? And notice this is not a non-stick pan. So now what you do is you just turn it away and flip it. All right? Flour first, shake off the excess. Then you put it in the egg. The flour, once you put it in the flour first, and then the egg, it makes like a paste. And then you'll get a nice even breading on the fish. When I do fish, if I'm sauteing a piece of fish in a pan, depending on the fish, if it's a delicate fish, you know, like a flounder, I'll use a Wondra flour. And that puts a nice protective coating on it, but doesn't give you that heavy, starchy flouriness that you get on fish. Now notice, that fish will be perfectly cooked because we let the residual heat do it. Fish is very delicate. You don't want to overcook it. It's one of the most common problems in restaurants. Overcooked fish. So for this sandwich, we're just gonna, a little lettuce, some Roma plum tomato, and here's something you guys should take note to. Even though we season that, we still want to season the tomato. Everything should be seasoned on its own. This way when you eat it, everything has its own individual flavor. We're gonna take that gorgeous little piece of fish, slap it right on there. And we don't need a sauce because we're gonna make this, we're gonna take that dressing coleslaw and make sure we get a good amount of that on there. The most important thing with the scallop is not overcooking it. Not everybody, but a lot of people think you have to cook a scallop all the way through. That's not true. Scallops should be cooked till they're just barely cooked and slightly translucent in the center. That leaves all that sweet flesh there for you guys to eat. When they tend to get rubbery and hard and dried out when you cook them all the way through. The best possible thing you can do is get really fresh fish and cook it the day that you get it, and don't do anything to it other than a little bit of sea salt, maybe some fresh herbs, and just a little bit of citrus, orange, lemon, lime, and that's gonna be the best tasting thing you're ever gonna have. When you're cooking scallops, what you wanna look for is consistency and size. You know, you don't wanna try and cook this, this, and this all at the same time, because that's gonna be overcooked and these will be good. So when you're cooking them, the best thing to do would be to pick them and then cook them in groups of the same size. So if that means you have to cook them, you know, 2 separate pans, or 2 separate sheet pans if you're gonna bake them in the oven, then do so. Scallops, or when you're cooking, you wanna use sea salt. Sea salt, if you can't get sea salt, you want kosher salt. Look at the salt. That looks intimidating. It looks like you're gonna oversalt or put a lot on it. That's not the case. Sea salt actually melts out and has substantially less sodium. And when you take a pinch of that, because it's large, you're gonna hold substantially less than if you get iodized table salt, which is ground to a powder. So if you take the iodized table salt, when you salt something, you're gonna have a lot more salt in one area and it's just gonna sit there, as opposed to that flake's gonna hit it and the moisture is gonna allow it to melt out. And that's also gonna sound, that crackling, what that is that's all the moisture that's in that scallop hitting that oil and dissipating. And then what happens is, the key to making a really good scallop is you wanna get some texture on you, you want that nice crunch, and you can only achieve that by getting a dry scallop. Other scallops are processed. I'm sure most of you guys have bought scallops in a grocery store, and they look nice, and then you cook them and they shrink up and there's a giant puddle of water. And then we're gonna just set a scallop right on top of that. Then we'll take a different salad. We'll take a different, which is a wakame salad. It's got more of a sesame flavor. Nice little tomato slice. A little bit of oil. Tiny bit of pepper, tiny bit of sea salt. See that? Now what I like to do, just to richen the scallop up just a little bit, just a tiny little bit of butter. Then we'll lower the flame on this and let that butter just let the scallop kind of sit there. Now on the second side, I only cook it for about 1.5 minutes. Like I said, you want to have it slightly translucent in the middle. That's going to yield the best tasting scallop. When food is cooked, it'll come, the reason you run into problems with stainless steel pans is because a lot of people tend to want to move the food before it's cooked or seared properly, or they didn't put enough oil or fat in there.